Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to warmly welcome you to the 18th Annual International Conference Inproforum 2024, organized by the Faculty of Economics at the University of South Bohemian České Budějovice. My name is Ladislav Rodínek, and I serve as a Vice Dean for Science and Research at Faculty of Economics, as well as a Chairman of the Conference Organizing Committee. The theme of this year's conference is Entrepreneurship for Sustainability, a highly relevant topic that combines traditional entrepreneurship with environmental and social responsibility, aiming to promote long-term sustainability for both current and future generations. Now allow me to introduce our guests and keynote speakers. First, I would like to apologize to the rector of our university, Professor Pavel Kozák, who is unable to join us due to other commitments. He greets our conference. I warmly welcome Associate Professor Zuzana Dvořáková-Líšková, the Dean of the Faculty of Economics, under whose auspices this conference is organized. I also warmly welcome the keynote speakers of the plenary session, Professor Dr. Tim Smith, PhD from DePaul University from Chicago, from USA, and Associate Professor Doc. Ina Čábelková. She is from Czech University of Life Science from Prague. So now we will continue with the plenary presentation. At first, I would like to ask Professor Smith for his presentation, and topic of this presentation is value-based pricing and the pricing spiniometer. Please.
Hello. I think eventually we'll have slides. Yeah, that looks like it. Výborně. Okay, I am a speaker, a writer, teacher, and a consultant of pricing. I have been doing this since, well, I started my company in 2003, but I've been focused on pricing since 2008. If you want to find me, look on LinkedIn. Apparently I need to turn this on first. Maybe it was the other way. Okay, that is not working, so moving on. It is fine. I have done this before. Okay, so it works now. Thank you. Does the pointer work? Yeah, it does. Excellent. So I've been working with companies on pricing, actual pricing of products. Okay? The job of pricing people like me, and it is a job, is if it's one item, you go to an auction. You don't need me, I don't have a job. If it's a commodity like meat or rice or coal, you don't need me. You go to a market. You let the finance people manage it. But if it's anything in between, like that beautiful pink bag or that bottle holding water, or like a machine to scan your body, a CT machine, I have a job. Okay? And the question I ask is this is an academic conference. One question I ask is, who teaches people how to do pricing? I mean, that's an actual question there. And then the question I ask CEOs is, how are you doing? So I created something called a pricing spinometer to measure the quality and capability of pricing within a corporation. See, if you think about it, pricing, more than any other factor, has a direct impact on profitability. It is more powerful than lowering variable cost. It is more powerful than lowering fixed cost. It is more powerful than selling more quantity. If anything, as an owner of a company, you want to raise the prices without losing customers. Now, we are economists, so we think about elasticity. Good. But remember, the elasticity of meat is 0.7. If you're an economist, you know if it's the elasticity of 0.7, you want to raise the price because it's inelastic. But the CEOs don't do this. So you should ask, why? What prevents them? And that's the question I asked too. And some questions get it right. You think about pricing, it improves profitability. Profits drive market capitalization. CEOs get compensated off of earnings per share, market capitalization. So therefore, pricing should be a CEO priority. The problem is it's not. You take a look at supply chain management, no chief financial officer or CEO would accept the idea that I'm buying something for somewhere between 2 and 25,000 euros. I don't know. It depends on how the procurement manager negotiates. Nobody would accept that. But they honestly, from observation, do accept that they will sell something for between 2 and 25,000 euros with no reasoning as to why it's 25 versus 2. They don't control the pricing as a managerial function. Really, they don't. You can observe this in reality. And you're thinking, this is crazy. That can't be true. It's observable fact. So you look at this and you have the question being asked, boards, executives, they should pay more attention to pricing. Why aren't they? And I will hear these answers being told by CEOs. It's just a number. I find my costs, I add a margin, I'm done. Bad answer. Who decides what the margin is? Ah, that's right, I forgot to ask that question. Yeah, it's a real question here. Oh, it's a marketing problem. Marketing people, do you think they can do math? Market research. Cool idea. How am I going to do a market research if I'm selling Boeings or Airbus? Who would even answer my surveys? It's a stupid approach. It doesn't work. So we have to use economics. These issues are real. Oh, they say, well, pricing is just an administrator. Just get somebody, an analyst, throw it to them. If it's a decision that makes money, do you give it to an administrator? No. You give it to somebody who actually thinks for a living. They say, sales and marketing, we don't need an expert. We know how to do it. Well, guess what sales want? They want revenue, right? What do you do to drive revenue? You lower prices, which is opposite of raising prices to drive profit. So the incentives are wrong. The incentives are wrong. They say, this is the Wall Street Journal. There's supply, there's demand, there's the market forces. It's all the invisible hand. We have no control. It's just the market. Really? How many of you have an iPhone that you pay too much for? It's not just the market. Come on. They focus on, if you're in product marketing, they tend to focus on market share, quantity. You'll often hear accountants, not necessarily all of them, but talk about how cost is more important, cost control, or, et cetera. And then the real statement I hear, if I heard this from a Fortune 500 company called Snap-on. They make tools for fixing cars and trucks, okay? Tools, you understand? Yeah. And the CEO says, if I raise my prices, I'll lose everything. I'll lose all my customers. In an earnings call, where he also, at the same earnings call, yes, I listen to earnings call. I read them. It's called research. He stated, I'm making these toolboxes. I can't make enough of them. I'm putting them on discount to sell more of them. Think about this. And I'm going to build a new factory to make more of them because I'm selling these toolboxes and everybody wants them. He's building a new factory to sell something on discount that everybody wants. From a strategy viewpoint, is that stupid? Yes. Yes, it is. He's the CEO. He was more worried about losing a customer. So the alternative, and you can find pricing champions across Europe and the States, and they will realize that pricing is a strategic, competency within a corporation that delivers profitability and predictability within the company. It's something to be managed actively rather than a passive thing that is decided by some administrator. So, I tried to figure out how to measure this, or what its purpose. CEOs, pricing is a new field. It did not exist when I went to undergrad. Pricing barely existed when I went to graduate school to get my MBA at Chicago. So most CEOs are not aware of this, and they don't know how to use it. I mean, how many of you think of, oh, there's Dell, must have a great pricing department? How many of you teach students to go into pricing? We have a problem here. So I have to tell CEOs what good pricing looks like. And that's the point of a pricing speedometer. The point of pricing is to improve decision making. Treat pricing as a verb. It's a decision. And I thought decision making was under economics, not as a noun, as just a number. So you treat it as a decision making. And I'm trying to improve it. Stefan Liozu, Hinterhuber in Germany. Nagel, recently retired. Mueller, Germany. Smith, I'm a Smith. Gerald is another Smith. Joanne is another Smith. Adam, no relationship to Smith. Anyway, many others will agree the pricing's about value capture, making sure that my company is capturing its fair share of the value being delivered to customers. So think about it in terms of sustainability. You build a vehicle that requires less diesel. Woohoo! That saves the customer money. They don't have to buy diesel. The company gets its fair share of that savings. And they'll have a higher price for the upfront good. These are parts of what pricing says. I, however, will add a second issue, predictability. If I cannot, as a CEO, predict the price I would capture from a different customer, I can't manage it. And this is where statistics are useful for helping managers develop predictability. Is there anybody in the room from a pricing software firm? Because I invited them. No, my friends don't show up. Okay. So my observation is, at a minimum, we got about one person doing pricing for every 500 million in revenue. At a minimum. Minimal requirement to do good pricing. I've seen it up to 1 per 100 million in pricing. So 100 million in revenue means one person pricing. How many salespeople do you get at 100 million in revenue? Do you estimate? 10? 20? Maybe 50? Right? That could be 50 salespeople to one pricing person. That's usually the ratio. It's not a common number. It becomes closer to one as you get more complex. As the industry is evolving faster, you get closer to 1 per 100 million. When you're starting to change the business model, such as changing from conventional production to sustainability production, you increase the number of pricing people because the questions become more difficult. When you have a wide assortment, SKU count is what we call it in the States. A wide number of variety of, like, think Bauhaus. They have how many different products, right? As you increase the complexity, you need more pricing people. Why? Imagine you're like Grainger or Dell, and you have 1.6 million different SKUs. Or Hinkle, they make adhesives, not their consumer products. 1.61 million SKUs. Inflation in Turkey is 80%. You got to raise the price on 1 million SKUs, items, every week to keep up with inflation. How do you do that? And how do you do that so you don't mess up your price? It's difficult. It's actual work. So you need pricing people. High customer count. So it's one thing to do pricing to just from Boeing to airlines. There's only, what, 100 major airlines on the planet? But what happens when you start selling, like, not to airlines from Boeing, but imagine you're Parker Hannifin. Parker Hannifin makes hydraulics that makes the plane turn, okay? They also go into cars. They also go into Caterpillar and Komatsu heavy lifting cranes. They go into everything. Now I have different market segments. Oh, and by the way, Europe is not the same as the US or APAC or Latin America. Colombia is not the same as Argentina. Argentina, 100%, 400% inflation last year. Colombia, about 12. Stable government. So you have different commercial policies, different customer groups, different competition, different ways of thinking. The more complex you add to your company, the more pricing people you have it. And to give you an example of what an extreme looks like, and I have been studying mostly American companies, but there's a company by the name of Waste Management, and they have a competitor called Republic Services in America. Do you know what Waste Management does? It picks up garbage and puts it in a pile. Do you know how many people they have doing pricing at Waste Management? It's about a $5 to $10 billion company. They have over 250 people just doing pricing. 250 people doing pricing. And these people are making between $120,000 to $250,000 US dollars a year. It's a high value job. High value. Got it? You want to make money? There's an opportunity for you. Why do they need so many? Now, garbage collection in the States is a private enterprise. It's not run by the state, generally. The problem is that if I'm the city of Chicago and I need to write a contract to have my garbage collected, I want that contract for 10 years, right? Imagine if it was 1 year, and every year I changed garbage collectors for the city of Chicago. That means every year I fire 200 people and I hire 200 new people. Think about the cost of that disruption. Every year I tell these people, get rid of your trucks and throw them away. And I tell these people, buy new trucks. It costs too much for the supply chain. So they write a 10-year contract. Can you tell me the price to pick up your garbage 10 years from now, right now? No, it's a stupid question, right? It's impossible. So now they have people doing pricing using indices, like the cost of labor, the cost of GDP growth, the anticipated cost of gasoline, the anticipated cost of steel to drive the truck, maybe electricity to drive the electric truck. Lots of complex questions. So they have 250 people doing pricing to pick up my garbage. It's a real job. So here are the questions pricing asks, and I need to spend some time on this because this is actually, you didn't study pricing in college unless you were weird. I know this. Pricing, this is the value-based pricing framework. It is actually used by many businesses. I wrote this down in 2016 in my book, Value-Based Pricing Done Right. I'm going to start in the center and work my way out. Market pricing is about actually setting the price of the product when it first goes to market. So I work with software firms. Got 2 calls this week for software firms. Thank you for inviting me, because suddenly I won projects by coming here, although they weren't here. One was in Croatia, the other one's in New York City. So they have a problem with software of how do I price it? My variable cost is 0. How do I actually set the price? Per user? That makes no sense if I'm pricing software that requires artificial intelligence to predict what kind of treatment to give a person when they're giving a knee replacement. Maybe you've had a knee replacement. I have not. My sister, my mother, my father, they've all had hips and knees. But you got to pull it out of your socket. You got to put it back in. And when you pull it out, you got to put something on the knee or the hip. some of you have had hip surgery. You got to put a new socket on there. Well, which one do you use? And how do you make sure that socket doesn't get ground into your old socket so that you just are in more pain, right? Now, artificial intelligence can help. How do you price that? It is a private good made by, not by governments, by people, by companies. So that's what market pricing asks. What's the price? Tell me the price. And how many of you know the price of a knee or a hip replacement? Your checks, you don't pay for it. Do you think your doctors know? No, they focus on helping you. So who knows? This is why market research doesn't work. So price variance policy. I'm going to go down one here. Price variance policy in Europe is better known as commercial policy. So that's like your rebate strategy, or in America, it's your discount strategy. In Latin America, it's both discounts and rebates. Discounts are on the invoice, rebates are after the invoice. All of it's part of your commercial policy. Here, who makes those decisions? Let the salespeople make it up? No, there's an actual decisions. That's a pricing problem. Then we got price execution. Literally, companies sometimes fail to cut the invoice right. I run a small business. Do you think my invoices are always right? I try, but I fail. I mean, it's just a fact. We have to execute on what we said we would do. Salesforce.com made a lot of money with CPQ solutions, configure, price, quote. It's a whole set of technologies here. Moving up here, you got pricing strategy. Classically, it was written as skim, neutral, penetrate on a price to benefits platform. Skim, neutral, penetrate. That's not it. We also have, look at all those different pricing techniques. I can do unit pricing, two-part tariff, tying arrangements, good, better, best versioning, price bundling, subscription, SaaS, yield management, index pricing, dynamic pricing, and believe it or not, pay what you want actually works in certain industries. That's a strategy, to choose one or several of those. Competition strategy. Put it in context of Czech Republic right now. I understand that the European Union just slapped on, what, a 45, 75% tax on BYD for importing cars from China? Something like that? You get the idea. Was that good or bad? I'm going to ignore that for a second. But the issue is that if I'm Skoda, do I worry about BYD? Oh, yes, I do. If I'm Porsche, do I worry about BYD? No, it's a different customer segment. So I start to think instead about who is my competition and who do I need to respond to. These are parts of it. And finally, business strategy. Your classic Kamichi Ome, 3 C's. Who's my customer I'm trying to serve? What's my competitor I'm stealing them from? And what will I do to make them choose me? So these are the kinds of questions you would ask as you're going through the value-based pricing framework. The transactional pricing. I need to give salespeople guidance. If I don't give them guidance, I can't just give them a list price, because the first thing they do on list price is they discount or they give rebates. I need to tell them what to expect out of the negotiation. So this is where your negotiation classes come in. I need to tell product managers some accurate expectation of the price they can get for a product. There's lots of different ways that you can do it. The skills are the last candle. Promotions. We all see promotions. I think I talked about it in my marketing class. Where is she? Oh, well, she's somewhere. How do you actually give promotions, sales, sleva, akce, decent ways of thinking about it? How does consumer behavior, behavioral economics impact that? My commercial policy, how do I change it based upon the cultures, the geography? I mean, like I said, Colombia is not Germany, and Germany is not Czechia. 2 totally different commercial policies, just like walking across a piece of land. Business models, economics. This became something I started talking about a lot. No one can predict the next recession, but we know we will have one. So how are you going to manage the business over the course of the next recession, recovery, when the labor market goes bad? We know it's going to go bad. We just don't know when. Or recovery. High inflation. If you're in Argentina, that's called every day. But how are we going to do that in Czechia? Real questions being asked here. Okay. So the question I'm asking is, does the organization have the capability, the people and the technology required to address the problems that they will be facing to actually move forward as a company? Or will they, like many companies during COVID, be caught flat-footed and go bankrupt? And so I've looked at a number of companies. I've given 5 vertebrae out of 5 for good companies. Unilever's up there. Parker Hannafin's up there, Waste Management. 1 for bad companies. Schlumberger had no pricing capability. Darden Restaurants, I gave them a 1. Darden Restaurants, this was like 2 years ago. Darden Restaurants has declared bankruptcy on more than one of its business units. This actually has predictive capability of who's going to go bankrupt next. Not a happy story, is it? Oh well. So let's take a look at Hinkle. How many of you know Hinkle? Man, only that side knows Hinkle. You know Hinkle? Okay. Man, Hinkle, 21 billion in revenue, euros. That's a large company. A very large company. Take a look at price execution. How do I help the salespeople do what I need them to do? I need to give them deal price guidance. Sales support, here's an example of a research paper I wrote, and sales incentives. I'll go to the sales incentives beginning with. Most salespeople are incented off of revenue, right? Like they get commissions based upon revenue. Is that the same as profit? It is not. Revenue and profit are 2 different numbers. The optimal price for profit and the optimal price for revenue are 2 different numbers. So it fails on that one. Kellogg's, you know Kellogg's? They're great. Yeah? Kellogg's? Okay. Kellogg's likes to give people gross profit at the end of the year. Now, if you don't know your sales package until the end of the year, does that change your behavior as a salesperson? No, it's useless. If I try to tell them the gross profit at the time of the sale, then imagine how that's going to happen when Kellogg's sells to Walmart and Walmart learns that their Kellogg's is making money. Kellogg's will then have to lose the negotiation. Yeah, so that's a failure. Stair steps. How many of you have seen sales compensation packages where it's like part of it based upon margin, part of it based upon market share, part of it based upon revenue, part of it based upon teamwork? That's always like the nice, gushy one. Have you seen those sales comps? Anybody here from the management side, HR? Well, I have. Now think about it. If you're given like 10 different metrics, what do you do? Do you care about any of them? You just choose the one that you think will get you promoted and you go on with life. So it doesn't work. The deal quality score is something that is perfectly profit aligned. It's simple, but when I've used it, I can only use it in 2 out of 10 companies because it's too scary to get the CEO to start thinking about profit instead of revenue. Another thing we can do is we can actually, as pricing people, take a look at customers like Spaniel, Collie, Shepherd, Bulldog, Terrier. These are supposedly different customers. Put them on a plane and say, are they paying higher or lower price than the average customer? Are they getting a better mix or a lower mix than the average customer? And what do you do if they're paying good money and they're buying the right products? You say thank you. And what do you do if they're buying bad products and they're not even buying the paying a good price? You say thank you, goodbye. So you can help salespeople figure out how to manage their customers better, kind of a thing. Price variance, this is back at Hinkle. Hinkle can say, well, are my rebates worked? Hinkle's global, so they also do discounts. And they work in APAC, and they work in China, and they work in the US. So I can ask myself, are my incentives aligned? Am I determining the right price by customer segment, by industry segment, by customer size, by all of these different questions, by product mix? How am I actually setting the right price out here? And every Hinkle also sells things like Purcell. Is that right? Is that how you say it? We don't have it so much in the States. Purcell, they sell home products and washing machines and dishwashing liquid, etc. So we have issues about price promotions, elasticity, break-even incremental sales promotion, performance tracking, forecasting. I can't just leave all of this stuff about promotions up to a marketing communications person because usually they don't understand the math. I need to actually help them. Or else they'll just plug and chug. Market pricing. Yes, we have cost. We also need to do market research, all sorts of ways to do that. Economic value to customer will be the economic approach. For the industrial side, and the consumer side, you can do conjoint kind of an approach, so it depends on which side you're after. They're moving into services, as is anybody involved in sustainability. How do you price for services? Can't give it away. People cost money. Price positioning. Here are their products. Some of them you recognize, yes? Yeah. How many of you recognize Aquence? These are industrial adhesives being used. And then they have tons of custom products for automotive, for your computer, for your iPhone. I mean, they have to use adhesive to seal the glass onto the phone, right? It's adhesives and everything. They have millions of products. And they can do price discrimination. If you don't like the word discrimination, use the marketing term, segmentation. And you can see how they're doing good, better, best pricing on some. We can also see some different competition. I mean, in adhesives, they compete directly with H.B. Fuller and 3M to some degree. H.B. Fuller directly. Then when it comes to not the adhesive sides, but the other side, that's basically Procter & Gamble. So they have different competitive groups that they have to manage. And you have to think, how am I going to actually compete with them? There are reasons when you just simply say, I give up. Like Nokia, I give up. iPhone 1. They work all over the globe. So think about how these economic factors determine the price they can capture. They would all have a huge impact. So I take a look at this, and here's what the CEO, Kirsten Noble of Hinkle, had to say. Pricing, this is the earnings call. He's talking to the shareholders. He's doing this to communicate why they should invest. So if you study finance, corporate finance, this is him talking to the shareholders. And he puts right up there, pricing is a continued to contribute positively. Volumes against improved sequentially versus Q1 and 24. In adhesives, volume picked up versus Q1 despite an overall demand environment. In our consumer business, we also reached positive levels when considering the impact from our portfolio measures. So, from a managerial accounting viewpoint, he's actually reporting a variance analysis of revenue, a revenue variance analysis, which is directly tells you, did my volume go up or down? Did my price go up or down? Did my mix improve or deprove? And he's aware of this. 1 out of 10 U.S. Fortune 500 companies report variance analysis in their financial reports. Most of the people in this room have no idea what a variance analysis is. It is an accounting tool used by pricing to determine whether or not you're doing a good job. Here's the Marco Svoboda, That sounds pretty Polish to me, with the W, right? We delivered good organic sales growth, 2.9%, driven by both business units. Pricing contributed 2.5%, while volumes were in the positive territory with 0.04%. That's a price variance analysis right there. They can actually go back to the transactions and tell you what was driving profitability. And they were telling this to the financial shareholders. The management is aware of the importance of pricing in driving their corporate performance. When you look at the benchmarks, they were within expectations. They were dispersed across the globe. They were focused on analytics. A lot of pricing is analytics and strategy. There was no vice president of pricing, unfortunately. Companies do actually have vice presidents of pricing on a regular basis. Then we go down to the 1% windfall, which I think I talked about in the marketing communications class. Were you there in the marketing communications or the? Okay. The 1% windfall says if I improve price by 1%, holding all else constant, what's the bottom line impact? 1% improvement in pricing, holding all else constant, has an 11% improvement in profit for Hinkle. Tell me that's not important. Yeah! And yet you don't teach it. Whoa! That's an accurate story. So Hinkle overall, their consumer products, bad. They don't have much of a pricing team. But the adhesive technologies, they have a very strong pricing team. Their direct competitor, H.B. Fuller, also very strong pricing team. So I had to give them overall, the company is 50% adhesive, 50% consumer products. I give them a 3. So we look at pricing challenges on the future. Here's your GDP growth in the U.S. We're growing pretty strong right now. Despite what the great orange one had to say, we've had the best economy in the world ever in our history, the U.S. history. The great orange one ran our president. I'm sorry. But yeah, we've had a great economy in the U.S. Lately, EU, man, that's difficult. I'm sorry. Hopefully you'll fix that. All right. Business challenges. This is affecting everybody across the globe, U.S. and EU. Logistics, the cost of shipping. The cost of shipping has gone up because of, well, war. Yemen fighting and shooting down things with Russian support to tell us how to kill off people shipping goods. How cruel is that? Anyway, we have that problem. We have another problem of actual drought, lowering the water level in the Panama Canal, so I can't ship ships through the Panama Canal. It happens. Oh my gosh, it's not just Europe who has drought. Anyway, all of these things. Oh, and the U.S. threatened. This is beautiful. Unions, we threatened to have a longshoreman strike, and so suddenly all the ships started sticking their containers on land as quickly as possible to avoid a strike. But look at our price since 2023, 1 to 2,000 of an index up to 6,000. That's a 6-fold increase in logistics. That's going to affect every single business. Every single business. Tariffs. Think about how tariffs are great for business. They're horrible for business. You know it if you're an economist. And yet we also are looking at an increasing regime of tariffs on top of tariffs. That will cause problems. Then we think about marketing environments and the economic, legislative, technology, competitive social culture. We try to apply issues of actually supply and demand. And this can help people tell you what to expect in terms of pricing. Shall it go up? Shall it go down? What will happen to my demand? Will it increase? Will it decrease? Just big picture alone would help the CEO know which direction to go. And if you don't tell him or her that, well, they make stupid decisions. When I think about pricing, it delivers profits, corporate resiliency, and agility, the ability to change direction, which companies must do especially when you think about AI and sustainability. So that's what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very inspirative presentation, interesting presentation. So and now is space for your questions. Who will start? It's necessary to use microphone. Yeah. Use streaming.
Okay, thank you. Is it? Okay, thank. No.
I think it's just for.
Is it okay? Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So we met each other yesterday, and now we continue little bit our discussion. So thank you very much for your interesting and lesson, full of energy as usual. Yeah, that's perfect. And you mentioned one diagram where are competition, customers, and companies. Yeah, let me go back to this customers. Yeah, to these customers. How do you work, or how do you take into your reaction, into your model, into your idea, the expectation of customers? Yeah. This pricing policy or this pricing management is able to encourage some expectation of people or build it or some how it is. So that's my question. Thank you.
It's a how does pricing influence customer expectations is the question being asked, and it's a very nuanced question. I will give you one example, then I'll give you a counter example. Okay. Starbucks in the U.S. will routinely announce that they're raising the price of a cup of coffee. Now, you're Czechs, you know how bad Starbucks is. You have good coffee in this country. When Starbucks raises the price of its coffee, the Wall Street Journal dutifully goes out and interviews people about how you feel about the raising of the price of Starbucks. And people will dutifully respond with, I hate it, they're stupid, they don't understand me, they don't know how hard their life is. Then the next quarter comes out. Revenue's up, volume's up, forget about it. So people lie. It's the first question I want you to point out. People lie. When I look at market research techniques, Gabbard, Granger, and Van Westendorp, they're very popular in the European Union because they're cheap and easy. They're also known to be wrong, plain and simple. And I get asked to do it, and I tell the sponsor to do it, and then they say, well, we don't want you. We want people to do it right. I'm like, well, there's no right way of doing the wrong thing. It's the wrong thing, right? Then on the other side, GE came out with a new turbine, like a wind turbine, and they wanted to price it, I'm going to make up the number, at 10 million euros, and usually they sold this thing at 1 million euros. And the salespeople said, nobody will buy that. And so the pricing manager says, the first person who sells it at 10 million, I will give a $1 million check to. Somebody sold it at 10 million, and then the rest of the salespeople could sell it too. So there's that problem of perception and adjusting perception. In the United States, we just had an election, and part of it was inflation, right? And inflation was perceived to be still high. Well, our inflation was only like 2% right now. And the highest it got was like 8, maybe 9. That's nothing compared to Argentina with 400%, or Europe even had 12. So we've never had or Turkey with 100%, 80%. So it's not really high inflation, it's the perceptions that makes a difference. Here's where the behavioral economics comes in, and eventually they'll wake up, but it takes a while, like 6 months to a year. Was that helpful? Yeah.
So thank you very much for the presentation. We haven't started our discussion yesterday. We have just met today. And actually, I do not have a question. I have maybe one comment or rather a perspective. The idea is that I had a chance to listen to a couple of people from anti-monopoly committees all around the world. And what they are talking about is that their regulation strategy in the cases they are regulating are very much changing over the last year. And one particular example is, imagine a situation where you have agricultural commodity which is grown in one country, transported to the other country and sold to the other country. And there are three parties in the game. The grower, the person who produced, transportation company, which is also reseller, and the customer, eventual customer. And the idea was that this transportation company has a perfect information about the yields in particular countries and about the transportation needs. And it does have access to financial markets. So what it actually does, it has internal information about the yields. It has internal information about the demand. It has access to financial markets. And from this point of view, the pricing strategy for it, for both sides, and ideal pricing for her, the more volatile, the better. Mm-hmm. Because eventually, what it does, it earns not on the transportation, but it earns on internal information within the financial markets. So these new situations, which will be happening over and over again, I mean, they can kind of change to a large extent the motivation with respect to pricing strategy. And why anti-monopoly commission? Because actually the producer wants the stable prices as possible. The consumer, ideally as well. But the intermediary, for it, the more volatile, the better. So this is quite an example for the new.
It is. In terms of monopolies, I actually never work for them because they don't need me, because they can manipulate the market to make themselves a price. But I do work for companies like Dell because they do not have monopoly, they're competing. And what you described, I have seen happen in coffee markets and soybean markets. It happens in wheat. I mean, it's a common approach. This might be exactly why Cargill is a $150 billion US company that you've never heard of. Do you think Cargill wants to advertise that this is how they make money? That's exactly how they make money. Yeah, but, you know, such is life. Ja to život. Ja nem.
Understood you correctly, you invented your own model of pricing or some kind of model. So does it work for software pricing?
Okay, let me clarify. In 2007, I started to move into pricing. And what I did then, I didn't invent anything, but I wrote a textbook called Pricing Strategy. It's used across the globe. You can use it in your own college if you want to. What I did in pricing strategy is I took the field of economics, of marketing strategy, of accounting, and of finance, and I put them all in terms of the questions that you saw here of pricing. I did not invent anything, because you don't invent things in a textbook. What you do is you try to put it into a manner to teach students how to do the job, right? Okay. That was 2007, and I wrote that textbook. It was reviewed in the UK. It was called the best. It's used as the standard of teaching across the Indian Institutes of Management in India. Move forward in time. Moving forward in time is when I started to look at this profit bridge. This is what I called it, the price volume mixing bridge, or the variance analysis as managerial accountants would look at it. The reason why I was asked why I did this is that I was told by the CFO, I will fire you if you help me lower prices. I will only pay you if you help me raise prices. And I will measure you by this. And I was like, where did that come from? I don't know what this is. I'm completely confused. And then I started to look at the math, and I was like, now I know where it's come from, and it's also biased. It's biased in a particular manner. And I wrote research papers on the bias of that. The weird thing was, I know companies report the profit bridge in margin as well as in euros or dollars. Well, there's no reliable way to report the bridge, the variance analysis, in a percentage format without having a bias. And that's what I also wrote a paper about. It's why this is stupid. I don't understand. But in doing that, I tripped across this mix versus price by customer approach. I was like, no, that's workable. I know how to derive that. So that was something I published. That's the publication. My actual PhD is in quantum mechanics. So I'm so sorry. I got an MBA, though. Really, I do. I did study business at some point.
Thank you. I think I have a completely different question. What do you think about a possibility of dynamic pricing in retail? Because there is a starting discussion with the electronic tax, shelf tax, and also with automated stores. They would like to start with dynamic pricing.
Yeah. So thinking in terms of Uber and Lyft as a decent way of pricing, people have tried it. Coca-Cola famously tried to do this in Brazil and raise the price of Coca-Cola during hot weather or when football was happening, and then lower the price afterwards, and the people revolted. Just as people revolted when Uber would raise the price by a factor of 10 on New Year's Eve and then lower it afterwards. So there's that problem of revolt. Uber and Lyft didn't care if you revolted. Coca-Cola did, because they're about brand reliability. I am seeing experiments on dynamic pricing with, like, in America, it's common to change the price of a good every single day on the store shelf. Okay? Every day they change the price of the good. They change the price in Europe a little bit less often, sometimes only once a year. So it's a different way of the way the customer is trained to engage with pricing. In America, we're more engaged with it. I will note, how much money has Uber and Lyft made in their corporate lifetime? They've only lost money. They've never made money. So there is that question. And Amazon.com, do you think they've been profitable ever? It's Amazon Web Services that makes money. So just warning here. Then how did they get so big? Shareholders, rewarding them for growth, not for profits. Interesting. Any questions, comments?
Sorry, I started to think, and so we are starting the discussion. I put a little of effort on studying new technologies, whatever is going on in society. So my question would be the impact of social networks.
What?
Social networks.
Oh.
To pricing mechanisms first, and to price acceptance of consumers. The reason I'm asking that, because we also with our students studying the pay as you wish strategy. It's quite fun, and it is very much related to social networks in some cases. By the way, one comment: dynamic price in hotels in Europe. Some hotels use everyday dynamic pricing as well.
Hotels?
They
use yield management.
Okay. So, social networks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, yield management is usually taught in the United States in the operations department. It is used by hotels. Airlines came first with it. American Airlines invented it. Hotels definitely use it. And it's a way of mechanically raising prices based upon forecasted demand. I use it when selling tickets to events. So Tay Swift, right? You know how she had the $1,000, $2,000 tickets? She used yield management to get those prices, okay? I've seen them used on trains. Union Pacific uses it for shipping things across the United States. Logistics, so that's where H.B. Hunt in the States, Maersk here in Europe, they will also use yield management. It's a very technical technique. The dynamic pricing, where I'm literally just changing the price based upon demand and supply on a daily basis, they are experimenting with that, but that wasn't the question. The question is what about group buying or about social networks? Now, the social networks is actually what brought me into pricing to begin with, because that had to do with software pricing here and externalities. And the externalities encourage the base product in a tying arrangement, the base product, like HP printers, to be given away, and then they charge you a lot for the ink, right? And it works. We all have, well, apparently I don't, but we all buy Gillette razors. And, you know, they sell you the first razor really cheap, and then they charge you a lot for the second razor, right? So it works. The group buying, though, is different. The group buying is, in my concept of what you're asking about, in China, they will get a bunch of people together in a group to buy the same item. And if they get enough people, they will finally buy that item, but at a much lower price. Is that what you're speaking of?
One of the cases.
Yeah.
3 different others.
And I will be frank, I don't know much about it. I think it's an active research question, okay? But it seems to be popular in China. I worry about every time I have to give up money, though, because I'm greedy.
Good morning. What are your recommendations for practice to multinational companies on the background of unfair competition from China in regard to high subsidies and cheap labor and monopoly in the logistics? So what do you recommend to multinational in regard to strategic and feasible pricing?
This is where my message gets more difficult, and it's not well received, okay? And it's related also to sustainability. So I was talking to a plumbing company who makes both sustainable plumbing and unsustainable plumbing. Like, think of Lixil, okay? And the sustainability manager says, why don't we raise the prices of our unsustainable products so everybody wants to buy our sustainable product? Sounds great for sustainability. It would cause the company to lose 80% of their sales and go bankrupt, right? And that's when I reported to her, this is not a problem for a company to fix. This is a government problem that you must have government action on. So here's where I may cause problems. Recently, we had the raise of taxes on BYD coming into Europe. Well, think about it. They do have government support, subsidies for building the darn car, and they are fine to use as much coal as possible to make it. So it does have a green tax and a subsidy tax that makes sense. Did the EU choose the right number? I don't know. But it was not a problem for Volkswagen to solve. It was not a problem for Renault to solve. That was a government problem to solve. This is where I'm not like a free marketer, even though I'm from America and I went to the University of Chicago. I believe in externalities. I actually believe there are points of using subsidies to drive behavior and to use, what's it called, taxes to change behavior. Because sometimes the market equilibrium on a free market doesn't lead to the optimal outcome. That was way too textbooky, wasn't it? Sorry. I think I'm out of time, so I want to thank you all, and I've enjoyed very much having this opportunity. Somebody should take my photo, because, you know, otherwise I won't know that I was ever here.
Thank you very much for interesting presentation, for discussion. And now we will continue with the second presentation. I would like to ask docentka Čábelková And the topic of this presentation is innovative business models for a sustainable future, the role of consumers.
Okay, so first, thank you for this opportunity. I'm very happy to be here. And for some reason, as very often in the life it happens, it actually continues some line of discussions we had with our American colleagues this week. And also I'm very happy I have really intellectual enjoyment of the discussions we had today. Today I will talk about innovative business models for future. It changes itself. And the idea is the following. When we are talking about the business model, especially from the point of view of legislator, it may be a legislator on the government level, it may be a legislator on the level of European Union. We are currently talking on environmental challenges, social responsibility, economic imperatives, political imperatives. All this is important, yet, why is that? Why is it doing this? What we actually forgot is that it's very nice that we will regulate our businesses, but it is also very much important whether the products which we will create, sustainable this way, will be bought by our consumers. One of the important examples of this type of product is bio products which are sold in our supermarket. And the experience of the supermarket very often that it's very nice that they have it, but very few consumers actually buy it. And what we know is that price is very much also important in this respect. So if you want to be sustainable, we also need to talk about the other important side of consumption. And I will talk about the consumer side on the example of very, very innovative products. It means genetically modified food. What do we know about GMO? Again, I'm very happy to have here an American colleague because the situation in Europe and in the United States with respect to GMO is oppositely different. So, and all over the world as well. So what we know about genetically modified food? First, it has quite a lot of benefits. First, nutritional value may be improved. Allergens we can get rid of. We can grow crops in very arid conditions, so climate change. All the countries, not in Europe that much at this point of view, but Central Asia and African countries, very arid conditions getting worse and worse, though they can be better off. We can produce this crop without herbicides. Actually, they can produce herbicides themselves. We can produce without excessive chemistry. We can improve food supply and agriculture in poor countries. Even we can make the products which will have longer shelf lives. And of course, we can reduce both economic cost and footprint because it's very simple. These products do not need that much tilling, therefore we do not use that much of gasoline, therefore we do not produce that much CO2 emission, so it looks very nice. And very sustainable, and very innovative, yet there are some risks. The first possible risk is a health reaction, possible allergies. The other worry is that we don't know about the effects, what happens in general, we cannot predict everything. There might be some impact on biodiversity, cross-pollination can influence to lead to superweeds. Most likely, there will be a problem with anti-monopoly committee, monopoly reason, because we have very few companies. Actually, altogether in the world, there are around 6 main companies producing the seeds in large amount for these particular products. So patents of these companies, which the seeds are produced and can be used only for 1 year. So the next year you need to buy the other seeds. We are not sure whether we will have all the information as for labeling, and of course different governments will have different ideas. Yet, with all the problem, yeah, I will be talking more loudly. I try. With all the problems and all the doubts in the United States, happy to have you here. From 1996, where these particular products started to be commercially grown in the United States, in cotton, corn, and soybeans, currently almost 90% are grown from the genetically modified seed. And it's not only about these four, the percentage even in other products in the United States is very large. All over the world, the situation is very much different. Here, the blue ones is where it is commercially grown, and the white ones where it's kind of forbidden. So we see that most countries which are commercially growing these products are the United States, also the countries of the Southern America, China, India, Australia, Indonesia, some African countries, surprisingly not many, because as you saw, they have very good benefits for the African countries, not that many European countries, and not Russia and not Central Asia. So what is going on? We have a commodity which has potentially really large benefits and very large risks, and we have so many countries which have very, very different attitudes. This is a graph of acceptance and rejections. So where we have the blue squares, the products are banned altogether, or the labeling should be very much strict and up to, for example, the green one is up to 0.9% can be used. So the situation is very much different. Yet, globally, what we expect? Globally, in all the continents, we expect a very quick increase in the demand of food market for genetically modified food, except one continent, and this is the United States, basically, and South America. North America, mostly North America. The reason might be because, tell me if it's correct, because the market is already saturated. Europe. In this situation, Europe is a funny country in the sense that in 1990s, European Union and the countries in Europe in general has the softest possible regulation whatsoever, much softer than the United States. The situation has changed around 2002 when there was created European Food Safety Autonomy Committee, and they started to regulate and basically, very easily speaking, they banned most of the product. However, they let each individual countries to have a board. If they want, they can, but most of the countries opted not to grow at this point of time. So this is a situation. This is innovative product, very controversial. The situation in the countries is very much different. But what about consumers? Consumers are, to say their words, would they be willing to buy genetically modified food? And this is a small part of the research we did with Czech respondents on this case study of European countries. So we had 884 respondents, representative for the Czech Republic, and we asked them, or we use the data, we asked them what they think. So I'm kind of a consumer study person, so it's kind of what I very often do. So the results are the following. Would you purchase? Here Approximately a third of the respondents, a little bit above, rather would purchase or would purchase. So they don't really worry it much, and approximately 25% would not purchase. But basically, it's not that much. It's not that much of a problem. The question was, the second was, why would you purchase? We expected that the first would be the price, because most of the consumers are very price sensitive, and in most consumer studies, what we usually see, that the most important factor for purchasing in all the countries, not only the Czech Republic, but in all the countries, very often it is the price. But here, no. So here, okay, some people will not buy, some people doesn't know, but from the people who would buy, the most frequent reason was the health reactions, but the health reactions, the positive ones, if there will be more ingredients which are positive for our health. For some reason it was more important for them. Do they have information? Okay, again, we see that only 8% of respondents heard about genetically modified foods and know what it is. 30% of respondents heard and approximately know what it is, but another around 60% of respondents either didn't hear about this at all or doesn't know what it is. So we are facing the situation in consumer studies, it's also very frequent, where we have an idea whether we buy or not. Most of consumers have, and yet they know that they are buying something, they don't really know anything about it. Okay. And of course, this was the newest method, the CRISPR-Cas9. It's genetic scissors. What is so much important? It's important from the point of view of health reasons and also from the point of view of legislation, because this particular new method allows to control more precisely which particular parts of genes are exchanged. And therefore, there are some ideas that legislatively should be regulated differently from the other products. And of course, above 80% of people have no idea, have no clue about this. So, what is happening here? Again, consumers are the agent which have to decide. They do not have much information, and they didn't hear. And this is not the only case, because we did similar studies for perception of nuclear energy, for example. It was exactly the same. Perception of nuclear fusion, perception of small nuclear reaction in energetic sector. And again, they have an idea, but they don't know about it. The question is, again, what to do with it? Just to motivate them to buy or not to buy, or to at least somehow even to set the price, for example. Can consumption of genetically modified food endanger human health? For those of you who have maybe not that much information, you might be surprised, and I was surprised with it, but there are some papers which actually suggest that genetically modified food can change human DNA. Those of you who studied biology, and there are quite a lot of papers as well, they said that it's not possible because it actually goes through intraintestinal tract and it doesn't really contact with the human DNA, so it's stupid. But it is a really valid point of discussion, and the latest discussion in this respect, it's not about the human DNA per se, but about the DNA of bacteria which are in our body. And there are quite a lot of dangers, because it may change it in the way that it does not reflect, doesn't respond to antibiotics. So it's kind of, difficult. And the question is that genetically modified food very often are presented as environmentally nice. So this is a question whether whether it has nice environmental effect because it doesn't really endanger the original species. Okay. So as for human health, people are not that much afraid. Most of them, they don't know, almost 40%. As for the DNA and as for the whole total health effect, it's around 35%. But the percentage of the respondents who are really, really afraid is around, let's say, 25% altogether. 25 to 30, approximately 1/3. This is a point very, very, very much important and studied. Moral acceptability. Is it moral to play God? Very much important, especially in the countries where religion is very strong. Not in the United States, maybe, yes. Not in the Czech Republic, it's an atheistic country, so we have here very nice bell-shaped distribution, a step of don't know, that's kind of half to half. Agree, disagree, and very nice in between. Labeling, that was the most funny part, because around 75% altogether wants it to be labeled. And this is these two slopes. And also 60 plus 85% never read the labels. Funny part, we want it to be labeled, everything, but we don't read it. And what is most important, choosing food here altogether, not genetically modified. Here as we expected price is more important. Okay, so this is the situation in the Czech Republic. But we were asking ourselves a question: what are the factors which impact the consumer attitudes? It's important for the pricing policy. The bubbles which are created in the social networks, because the people who are interested in something, they are interested because they may be afraid. So this is the point where we need to talk. This is the Czech Republic. What about in other countries? Consumer attitude. Now, tell me whether it's true or not. North America, widely accepted, integrated. Europe, more skeptical. Asia and Africa, it's more about economic consideration and food security concern. And Latin America, sorry, why doesn't it does this itself? Okay, they try to capitalize on economic benefits of genetically modified crops. And the future. What we expect, what we might expect. From the point of view of European environment, there is very nice lobby in European Parliament, mostly of farmers. Farmers love genetically modified food because it solves many, many problems. To make genetically modified foods more acceptable in individual countries and also in EU level. So that might be political concern, but also sustainability, climate change. Genetically modified food has a potential to solve a couple of issues of climate change. Advancing of biotechnology, we saw the CRISP method, it also the potential to improve. The role of social media, It will be important for consumer studies. It will be even more important. And of course, globalization and trade. As global food supply chains become more interconnected, consumer attitude in one region can be a ripple effect across the world, impacting global trade and regulation. If we continue to be connected, which doesn't really, it's not what we are, I hope to, but it's not what we expected from Wednesday. Yeah, the great, yeah, okay. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention. Please, one more comment. This picture was created by artificial intelligence. I wonder whether you see a mistake. What's wrong with it? It destroys the crops, exactly. So these are also new technology. Thank you.
Thank you very much for interesting presentation. Now space for your questions.
Thank you. Hi, Ina. Thank you for your very interesting presentation near to me, because there are a lot of environmental issues and so. But going back to your maybe second, third slide, it's not necessary to do it. Okay, it's not necessary to. You have, yeah. What this is about the role of customers. The role of customers. Yeah. Okay. And you mentioned that the role of customers should be influencer, and so on and so on. From very humanistic and very, let me say, democratic perspectives, I fully agree with you. But what about the role of customers like victims? Like victims. Yeah. Yeah. Victims of the big companies, of the big actors, and so. So that's, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this question. This is really very much important. As for the victims, we know that there will be, most likely, there will be some health effects also. Yet, in the countries like the United States, it doesn't seem to be so. It seems that nothing bad really happens at this point of time. We don't know it's short run, long run. As for the victims, customers as victims, two possibilities. The first, in case it's labeled and it's labeled correctly, then the customers have a choice. In case it's not, or the ingredients are not, then yeah, then you are absolutely correct. Yeah, then they are maybe victims. Thank you.
Our colleague just mentioned the victims of the big corporations, who I assume are for using genetically modified crops. But on the other side, there's I think there's the victims from countries, especially developing countries, who would greatly benefit from these, because I cannot really state, I do not exactly remember where it was, but there's been a case of an area where there was a very common reason for death for those people was a sickness related to the deficiency of a certain mineral. And biologists have developed a crop that could have supplemented that mineral in their diet. But activists basically stopped that from happening. So what do you think about that? And the potential for GMOs to actually help countries with famines, that suffer from famines and other crises related to this?
Okay, thank you for the question. I have one answer. It's not really related with disease, but we did a study of climate change in Tajikistan. It was paid by United Nations Development Program, and that was really a fun situation in this country, Central Asia countries. We actually were supposed to analyze the yields and crops produced over the last 20 years. And in corn, in two types of corn, there was like up, 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 then up, down, and then again, very slow. It seems, we didn't know, we didn't find why, but we think that particular year, 2 years, they used genetically modified crops, they tried it, and they abandoned this idea afterwards. So the victims for these developing countries, there might be two types. The first is what we saw in Tajikistan. It's more of a political and security, food security reasons, because it's not only about monopolization, but also food security. As for what you are talking about, the disease, it's difficult to answer this question because sometimes activists do a good job, sometimes they don't. Yeah, and it needs to be analyzed case by case. Was it really helped, and what were the other effects, side effects of this particular crop? But there are risks, there are benefits. Whether in this particular case it was a good and not decision, don't know at this point. We cannot say. We need to have more data for the analysis. Okay, thank you.
Lovely presentation. It left me with question. Did I understand correctly that you reported that the more people understand genetically modified crops, the more willing they were to eat it? And if so, how do you explain that?
Yep, there were two findings. First, the more understand, the more information they have, and the more understand the information, the more willing to eat it. So it means, it seems, that in this point, information serves as catalysator, how to say it, catalyzer for catalyst for purchasing the food or for trying the food. Yet, this is the reason I asked about social networks, because we don't know this point. We know only that they have information, and we know only that they think they understand, but we do not really know what they read. We do not really know whether the information they have encountered was the pro-GMO information or contra-GMO information. For example, the other finding we had was that the more they're looking for this information, the less they're willing to eat it. So this is the point of this. What I try to persuade my colleagues in the faculty to go to more research on social networks. It means we need to know how the bubbles on social networks are formed, which information is produced in the bubbles. But from all the other research besides the social networks, what we do know and what we do see is that very often the new technologies are not communicated to consumers in the way that it is understandable and it is kind of reasonably simple and presenting the benefits also and also the cost. One of the examples from the other study we did, the nuclear energy, the same, they need to decide whether you want or not. and yet they don't know anything about it. There is a lot of papers. It's not that there is no literature. There is a lot of papers, even in mass media. There is a lot of papers. The problem is that these papers are in a very specialized mass media, which is not read by usual people. And the simple information, so the benefits are this, the risks are this, it's almost never, ever available. We, as a researcher, have a job to study, and it's very nice. And whoever wants to do it, okay, they may. Thank you.
So, thank you very much for interesting presentation. And I would like to officially close this part of our conference, plenary session. Now it's time for lunch. And then we will start 1 o'clock afternoon in parallel session in this building. Thank you very much for your discussion, and I'm looking forward to meet you in the next program of our conference.